In the late 70s, arcades were popping up everywhere with games like Space Invaders and Galaxian. In 1980, they exploded in popularity thanks to Pac-Man, Centipede, and more. The coin-op arcade market was booming. Total revenue spent on arcade machines, between businesses buying them and customers pumping quarters into them, eclipsed the film and television industry revenue combined. This was big money. Nintendo wanted in. At this time, they were making clones of other hit arcade games. They made a lot of Space Invader clones, Pac-Man clones, and Breakout clones. Originality was not their strength. As a matter of fact, originality really wasn't anybody's strength at this point. They were all just copying what was working. In 1980, Nintendo opened up their North American branch to act as their American distribution arm. Nintendo president Hiroshi Yamauchi appointed his son-in-law Minoru Arakawa as president. He in turn hired his wife, Yoko Yamauchi, as Nintendo of America's first employee. They set up shop in New York City since that was the center of American commerce. But because of the stressful atmosphere of New York life and the horribly long shipment times to get product from Japan to America, they quickly relocated to Seattle. This would cut shipment time down from 4 months to 9 days. They also signed a distribution deal with Seattle-based arcade sales and distribution company Far East Video. Based off favorable test arcade sites in Seattle, Arakawa wagered most of Nintendo of America's finances on a huge order of Nintendo's latest arcade game, Radar Scope. Yet another Space Invaders clone that sounded like this. Turn it off, make it stop, I don't like it, I don't like it.
I want this to stop. Look, I want this to stop. I'm stopping this.
It was a failure. The company couldn't move the units. Sitting on a large stock of unsellable crap, Arakawa begged his father-in-law to make something new and original. Not having any engineers available to work on a new game, he asked a young junior designer who was pretty fresh from university with no computer engineering experience whatsoever to design a new original game. That designer is Shigeru Miyamoto. There, I finally pronounced his name right. Are you happy? Are you happy? He was tasked to design a game that would work with the already manufactured Radar Scope hardware. The goal was to sell what they had already produced, just to swap out the ROM and repackage the art on the plethora of leftover units. Miyamoto wanted to make a game that told a story. And what better story than a love triangle? Originally, he wanted to use the Popeye characters. They would fit perfectly with what he had envisioned. And Miyamoto figured that since Nintendo had the Popeye license to manufacture Popeye playing cards, he could use the characters for his game. He couldn't. That's not how intellectual property rights work, and they were unable to get the correct license for the likeness of those characters to use in his game. So, he made his own characters. Because this game was going to be primarily for the North American market, Yamauchi wanted the game to have an English title. So, Miyamoto named it after the antagonist character, Donkey Kong. And the name comes from Miyamoto's misunderstanding of the English language. He wanted something that said stupid ape, or stubborn gorilla, without saying it outright, obviously. Donkey came from a Japanese to English dictionary, because that can typically be another word to mean stubborn or stupid.
I know that monkey! His name is Donkey! Monkeys aren't donkeys! Quit messing with my head!
And Kong was a common Japanese slang term at the time for gorilla, thanks to the American film King Kong. This would lead to a humorous but significant problem for Nintendo down the line. The game was a huge hit. Besides selling arcade cabinets, it was also ported to the Atari, Coleco, the Famicom, and NES when they were released in their respective regions, and had its own Game & Watch handheld. Other licensing opportunities abound as well. Toys, board games, the whole shebang. What was a failure in 1980, almost leading to Nintendo of America's collapse, turned into an overnight success in 1981. In 1982, Sid Sheinberg, a lawyer and president of Universal City Studios, suspected Donkey Kong might be a trademark infringement on Universal's own King Kong. He went bananas. He threatened Coleco with legal action over their home console port and got them to agree to pay $4.6 million in royalties for the game. He also revoked Tiger Electronics' license and then turned his sights on the big money, Nintendo. Howard Lincoln, who was an employee of Nintendo of America and a lawyer, refused to cave in to Sid's demands. In June of 1982, Universal formally sued Nintendo and sent cease and desist letters to Nintendo's licensees, all of which agreed to pay royalties to Universal, except for Milton Bradley and Purina, the dog food company? That's odd. Guess they licensed anything and everything. The case went to court. Universal argued that Donkey Kong was too close to King Kong and consumers couldn't tell the difference between the two, thus infringing on Universal's copyrights and trademark rights. Nintendo argued they were very much distinct from each other and that there was no infringement, other than a coincidence in the Kong name. Nintendo also had an ace up its sleeve. John Kirby was representing Nintendo. When preparing for the case, he discovered a huge flaw in Universal's argument. In the 70s, Universal wanted to make a remake of the 1933 movie King Kong. At the same time, a rival studio, RKO, who made the original King Kong movie in 1933, wanted to remake it as well. The case went to court. Universal had discovered that the original book the movie was based off was technically in the public domain, since the rights holders never extended the copyright. They argued that the story itself and its characters were up for grabs. Anyone could make a movie as long as it didn't use or copy elements from the original 1933 film, which was still under copyright. Universal won the lawsuit. The story of King Kong was public domain. John Kirby presented this to the court. He argued exactly what Universal argued. The character of King Kong is public domain. Universal only had rights to their specific depiction of King Kong from their 1976 film. He argued that Donkey Kong was obviously not an infringement of that depiction. The court agreed, and was rather upset at Universal's schemes. The court also decided that not only did Universal not have exclusive rights to the King Kong character, but Universal nor anyone could ever have trademark rights over King Kong, because trademark rights would be impossible to enforce, since King Kong rights were held by 3 separate parties. Universal only had ownership of their depiction of King Kong, and that Donkey Kong did not infringe on that in any way. Donkey Kong would live on to fight another day and become its own beloved video game franchise.